What if the problem in your business isn't that you're growing, but the kind of growth that you're chasing, that you're pursuing, that you're heading down the path toward? Today, we're talking about the differences between the growth you want and the growth that you're actually built to carry. Hey, stick around. You're going to want to hear more about this.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
Hey, welcome back to Franchise Pitfalls and Profits. And as it said, the intro said, I'm Don Shin. This show is all about helping founders, operators, and franchisors grow in ways that are profitable, sustainable, and responsible, not just getting bigger. The reason I'm doing this is a new year and a new season, and we've been talking a lot about growing in ways that will allow you to be stronger and sustainable, not just growing fast. I am not anti-growth and I am not afraid of expansion. But the idea that growth is something that you're responsible for, well, that's just not something that everybody considers. I want you to think through sustainable growth and not just growth for the sake of growth and not just chasing opportunities. So today's episode just sits right in the middle of all that. You know, many business problems don't come from a lack of opportunity. They often come from taking opportunity before you have the structure to support it. That's what we're talking about today. Yeah, I have said these words in my 25 years of business ownership. I've said these words like take the order, and then figure out how to do it. But I think in the long run, that is one of the most dangerous things that you can do. One of the most dangerous assumptions in business is that if the opportunity is there, I should grab it. I should take it. More units, more clients, client I haven't done this kind of business for before, added revenue channels I haven't created yet, more locations than I'm really capable of supporting, grab more territory. On the surface, honestly, yeah, like I said, I've been there. It sounds great. It sounds like ambition. It sounds like the drive that I'm gonna do. It sounds like the vision maybe that I've always had. But here's the reality. Opportunity does not equal readiness. And saying yes too early can quietly damage the very thing that you're trying to grow, your company. And so here's the lie that I think most owners don't believe, or pardon me, they do believe. Here's the owner that most owners believe. And as I said, I've believed this myself at different times with different businesses that I've owned. And here's the lie. If we don't move now, we're going to miss it. There's this underlying thing, fear that growth windows are quickly going to end, quickly going to close. These opportunities are just not going to be there if I think it through. They're just going to go by the wayside and I'll miss something. There's this, again, thought process or fear that if I hesitate, someone else is going to grab it. My momentum is gonna fade, and that all of our excitement and energy that we seem to have right now is going to disappear. And so you just move. But here's the truth that no one talks about. It's the talk. As I said, it's just no one really talks about it. And you know that here on my show, I talk about the obvious and maybe not so obvious sometimes, pitfalls that are keeping you back from the profits, which is the other part of the name of our show. So here we go. Growth isn't just an opportunity. Growth can be a weight. And here's the thing that we just don't really embrace. And sometimes I think we just don't believe it. But this is the fact is that weight will reveal what your company looks like. It will reveal the architecture or the structure of your company. It's so interesting. I recently was watching an episode of one of these documentary kind of shows, and I believe it was Minneapolis or somewhere in Minnesota, where a main bridge collapsed, and it was all about the design of it and the architecture of it and the structure. There were some construction flaws in it to begin with, but they just didn't understand, based on that and the overall design, that if one small piece of that bridge failed, the whole bridge was going to come down. They also didn't realize the weight that they were adding on top of it. It was so interesting and so much of an analogy to what we're talking about here. They actually put tons of extra concrete or blacktop on the top of it. I forget why, but they did. And again, overall, they just didn't recognize the weight on that whole structure, with or without these construction flaws, the weight that was adding to the overall structure. And if the structure is strong, weight is going to make it's going to be okay in the bridge scenario. In business scenario, it's going to make you stronger. It's going to build the strength of the organization. But if the structure is weak, like my Minneapolis bridge analogy, weight exposes the cracks. Weight exposes the flaws. What got you here won't get you there, and this is going to create, it's going to shine spotlights on the weak areas of the company. And that, as they went back and re-engineered that bridge, they recognized some of the construction flaws that were actually noticed, believe it or not, but dismissed as not that big a deal. So growth will magnify what is already there. Let me repeat that, because if you get nothing else out of today's episode, I want you to get this. I want this to be clear. Growth doesn't create problems out of nowhere. Growth magnifies what's already there. So let's break this down in a way that try to make it very practical. You know that my episodes, my style, I'd like you to always be able to take things away and use them and apply them. So let me break this down into a practical look. There are three types of growth, I believe, that are going on in business, and most people only focus typically on one of them. And I'm going to talk about how important it is, if you want to really, really leverage your business and maximize the potential of your business. You're going to want all three of these to be in alignment. But let me break the three of them down, because these are the things that are classically happening in business. The first one is just what's called momentum growth. This is exciting. It's exciting times. There's a buzz. People are getting excited. There's early wins. Your marketing is getting some traction. Maybe you get some new clients and there's some cash flow or sales spikes. Maybe even something you're doing is you're actually starting to see, once you started to get a little bit of momentum with it, you're starting to see some traction with it. More and more opportunities are starting to show up. So this momentum type growth feels amazing. it's energizing for you as the owner or the founder, or and for your leadership team and your people. Um, it's validating in a lot of regards. Maybe you've had some plateauing times and you're just not quite sure of where you should be and what you should be doing. So this spike and this excitement and momentum, it's just validating. Yeah, we're doing the right stuff. We're in the right place. It just makes you feel good. And you probably are doing some things right and different, and you are probably in the right place. But this type of momentum is not structural. It's not architectural or structural. It is motion, and momentum and motion are not maturity. And this is where a lot of owners make some subtle mistakes. They try to scale movement. They try to scale this momentum in the company. They think, hey, things are going, they're working pretty well. Let's double down on this. Let's throw more stuff at it. Let's throw more money on it. Let's expand. It's going so well over here. Let's do it over here. They feel like people want more, so let's open another town, another territory, another location. But momentum can be very, very fragile. It absolutely, not can, it often outpaces the business that's underneath it all. And this is the challenge of simply the momentum and motion type growth. I want to share another type of growth with you. So the second one I want to talk about is called capacity growth. Um, you know, this is not sexy, if you will. Um, it's basic blocking and tackling. It's org charts. Do we have the right roles and the right people structure and the right people on the bus? Do we have the right systems? Hiring correctly? Are we training people well when we hire them? If it's a franchise system, are we supporting the franchise partners well? There's a lot of clarity. You're working hard to have process clarity. You're working hard as you're bringing people in and training them and showing them the right processes. You're working hard to have them accountable to get results. Nobody just holds parties and celebrates this stuff. We all are on social media, and none of this stuff is talked about or celebrated. You don't get applause for these things. There's not a lot of excitement when you put a new system in place or you improve your onboarding or your training. You don't get headlines for better, clearer documentation of your processes. But the reality is capacity is the container that holds growth. If momentum and motion grows faster than the capacity to hold it, the business suddenly starts to feel heavy. And there are things to look for if you're feeling this heaviness. There are some indicators. So you're probably seeing things like communication seems to be strained. We just always seemed that people knew, had the time to make the phone call, walk down the hall, et cetera, but there's suddenly a strain on your communications. There's constant firefighting. More and more things seem to be problems. We never had these problems before. Burnout. You've got your as the owner or the founder, you're expecting more of your people. You might be demanding more of your people. They may be very, very good people, but they may have not been trained. They may not have the experience base or the skills for what you're trying to do now. Or if they do, they just feel overworked. They're doing more work. So they're burning out. You as the founder, you as the leader, or if you have some key people, a leadership team, You're stretched so thin. You're putting in a lot more hours. You're working on Saturdays. Um, Sales, outpaces support. This happens a lot in franchising. The a concept or a brand is exciting. It's new. It's attractive, and your development people are selling like crazy, and then suddenly, wow, we don't have enough of the support type people to get these open quick enough, or we can get them open fairly easily, but all of that regular support that we did for the initial dozen or so, we're suddenly, when we've got 3 dozen or 4 dozen, we've got 40 or 50 franchisees now, we're just not getting around to all of them like we used to. So there's inconsistent execution. And then a lot of times what fades is your culture. You used to have a very strict way you did business and feelings about the business, and everybody on the team bought into that, and you would slow down long enough to talk about some of those kinds of things. But now you just don't have the time or the bandwidth to doing that. So from the outside, this business looks like it's growing, but from the inside, again, it's weightier. It feels harder to do. It's messier. We used to do things so well, and now we don't. So that's a capacity problem and not a growth problem. I promised you 3 ways to grow. The third growth is what I call the identity growth. So, what is identity growth? This is not one that people really even think about much. Um, Certainly, very, very few, if anybody, ever really plans for it. But as the business grows, you as the founder, you as the leader, you must grow as well. I've said for many, many, many years that if the leader isn't growing, the business is going to hit a ceiling. The business is not going to grow either. So this third type of growth is identity growth. The version of you that could run, your first 5 to 10 franchises, or the geography that you have today, the number of employees that you have. The version of you as a leader that could run that is not going to be able to run 3 or 4 times that, maybe even not 2 times that. And so identity growth for you as the leader is about letting go. It's about getting really strong, a strong leadership team that will take ownership and accountability in the business. It's about you not only finding them, but then trusting them. You're going to pay them well. You're going to put them in key positions. You now have to trust them to get the jobs done. You got to start making decisions at a higher level. You've got to start acting like a leader, and like the owner of a brand, and not like the operator. You got to shift from doing, is the bottom line. You've got to become more of that builder and less of the doer. We've often said with business owners, yeah, a lot of, if you're in the contracting business, you probably like to get on a ladder, or you like to swing a hammer. But the reality is, with this identity growth, you're just not going to be able to do that. And you also have to be not just a builder, but you also need to be a steward. If you want to do this well, and you want to do this in a sustainable fashion, if you want to do this responsibly, the right way, you've got to be a builder and a steward. So to me, the hard truth here is that you can scale momentum without growing your identity, but you can only do that for a while. You can scale with greater capacity, but again, your identity growth is going to be the ultimate way for you to leverage and really maximize what you have in your business. Eventually, things are going to hit a ceiling unless you as the leader are also growing. So that's when growth starts to feel personal and emotional, and you can start to get overwhelmed when you really start to move into this area where you realize you've got to grow. Your identity has got to change. So here's what I'd like you, to remember, and really a distinction that I want you to take away today. Um, Most people try to scale momentum. Smart operators scale capacity, but great leaders also scale themselves. And when again, I started out early on in the session today, in the episode today, of talking about alignment of these three. When these three things grow in alignment, your growth is going to be very, very strong, instead of being very, very suspect or very, very fragile or really unsustainable. So here's the reality check. Here's real world consequences as I start to wrap up today's episode. I want to tell you what happens when momentum outpaces capacity and identity. I've seen it many, many times as I've spent 25 years in small business and in franchising. On paper, things look good. Got a lot of units or more units. You've got more revenue, maybe different channels for revenue, and you certainly have a lot more activity. But underneath all of this, particularly if you're an emerging brand franchise and you're at this place, your franchisees start to feel unsupported. The openings don't get done as quickly as possible, quickly as they should. Staff turnover starts happening because people maybe didn't sign up for the stress and the pressure and the extra hours and the extra expectations, or they realize they don't have the skill sets or the capacity, so they start to leave. You as the founder or the owner, you start to become exhausted. You lay around over the weekends because you're so tired. You don't have the time and the energy to do for your family what you've been able to do. Um, Standards can slip. You had a certain way, and again, in a franchise model, you had a certain way that you helped out those first 10 or 12 franchise owners. But now that you're at 30 or 35 or 40, wow, that's just not happening, and it's noticeable. Um, and you just, again, as the founder or the owner, you really start feeling trapped instead of having this wonderful business that seemed to operate like a well-oiled machine. You could get home, you could take some time away, uh, you were freer. Suddenly that's gone. And if this is you, stick with me in our episodes of what we're talking about. But if you're at this place, you're starting to wonder why this feels so hard right now. These should be good times. We should be feeling good about what's going on. Why don't we? But take this away, that it's feeling hard because weight increased faster than your structure, your architecture of your company, the building of your capacity. Weight increased faster than structure did. Growth is not a bad thing. I am not anti expansion. I am not anti growth. Growth doesn't betray you, it just reveals what wasn't ready. Maybe it's just even places in your business, but it's just going to reveal what isn't ready yet, what wasn't ready yet as you started to grow. So here's what I've learned as I've observed these things over the last 25 years. The answer isn't just slow down. It's not don't grow, but it's just start to recognize, and try to match up your growth to your readiness. You don't scale what you want to scale what you can steward. How can you do this sustainably and responsibly? Responsibility, sustainability, and stewarding, these words matter. When you steward, you're responsible for the impact of your growth, the impact it has on the people that you've brought in to join in this momentum with you, your team, who you have on the bus. It impacts your clients. Are they ultimately, you opened all of these new locations, but have your standards gone down? So they're your clients that are using other locations are not getting what they should get out of it. If you're a franchise, your franchisees aren't able to improve themselves and their businesses the way you wanted it to. Again, this has an impact on yourself, your health. This is going to magnify any health challenges that you have. It's going to magnify any relationship challenge that you have. So this has a dramatic impact on yourself and your family. So growth is not just something to be achieved or achievement, it's responsibility. And again, if you get nothing else out of today, growth is not just an achievement. Again, it's responsibility. It's doing it the right way. It's doing it in a sustainable fashion. It's doing it in a way that you can feel good about what you are stewarding. So sometimes the most mature move is not to say yes to every one of the upcoming opportunities, but it's about really looking at strengthening the architecture or the structure that's already here in place. How can I strengthen it? How can I expand my capacity as I contemplate bringing on some of these new opportunities? So let's pay attention to something this week, your challenge, your takeaway, what's going on in your world. Let's notice where growth in your business is feeling exciting versus is it feeling heavy? Are there places in your business? As I said, some of the areas might be exciting and other areas might feel heavy. Let's look at this over the next few days, the next couple of weeks. Where does growth feel energizing and where is it feeling like just added pressure that you've not felt before, added heaviness that just hasn't been there? Excitement often points to momentum, but heaviness points to capacity and or identity challenges, or at a very, very minimum, they're being stretched, and you want to be cognizant of that. Neither one is bad, but they're just telling you that you've got to now start to address different things. Growth isn't something to chase, but it's something to observe and it's something to listen to. The future of your business isn't decided necessarily by how quickly you move, but how strong have you built your organization and your systems and the architecture underneath what's going on, underneath the motion and the movement and what you're experiencing in growth. So thanks for being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're getting value on this. Point a friend, a team member, somebody else that you know that owns a business. Point them to this podcast and this particular episode. And I will see you next time.